Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Matza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Cosa Music, inviting you to join in conversation with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. And don't forget to subscribe. It's free, and you'll get notices on exciting and new episodes coming up. Today, I have the great opportunity and the great pleasure of having Rich Mangicaro on this show. And this is special for me, and we'll probably get to this in a minute. Very special for me. We call it Paisano. But my question to you, Rich, first of all, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, and thank you. And also, I mean, before we get going, like, tell us what that first spark was. What started it for you? Like the flame, poof. Like, what was the beginning?
Well, you're talking about the very beginning. That's
yes.
I have probably a very similar story to a lot of guys because I'm old enough to say that my initial spark was Ringo, and I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, you know,
Yes.
and so it was really a combination of that and also the Lucy Show. I Love Lucy because at that time, it was around the same time period, you know, I saw Ringo, I saw the effect of that. And then also watching the Cuban music on the Lucy Show, I was really excited about that and seeing, you know, the percussion and the conga playing and on a television show at that level, you know, which is so fascinating to me now, you know, knowing the people that I know and work with and talking about that stuff, specifically recently, actually talking to Wilfredo Reyes Sr. about Desi, you know, and about his association with those people.
Wow.
You know, it's just so
Yes.
it's so surreal how it all came back around with Wilfredo telling me his experience with that. But, you know, anyway, so those were the two things that I think made me go, I want to do that.
How old were you then? 10?
Let's see, 64 was the
11?
Beatles, right? 64. So I was 7 years old or something.
7. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that, like, it really literally changed the world. And I tell everybody, you have no idea. You know, I say to everyone, I am so glad and so thankful that I was born when I was born and where I was born. And to have lived, and this just came to me recently, you know, to have lived my whole life with the Beatles, because that's what really was. And I cannot imagine what it would have been like if those 4 geniuses plus one, if that didn't happen, I mean, so much would have been weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy about that. But I'm glad that was your experience too, Rich. I have these conversations with, Greg Bizanet, tons of guys who had exactly the same story, different.
Yeah, I know. I know.
And then did you study music after that, or just, at some point?
Yeah, I studied, you know, and I was in school bands and all of that stuff. I had lessons when I was a kid in my hometown, but I probably didn't really get serious as far as study though until music college. You know, that's when I got serious about studying music, you know, and really learning to read and all the different aspects of it, you know. So,
right,
yeah.
And were you like mainly percussion, drum set, or both? Like,
I started out a drum set. That was my beginning was drum set, you know, and played in bands when I was in high school, and there was a band in my high school I was in and had a little single in town, and we played all the dances, and then we started playing clubs before I was 18 years old. I was playing in clubs, and then but when I got into college, that's when I started studying classical music and percussion. My first 2 years of college was at a community college in Syracuse called Onondaga Community College, and that's where I started really diving more deeply into percussion. But then my last 2 years of school, the third and fourth year of school was Syracuse University. And that's the guy that I studied with there kind of really got me into congas, and his name was Ernie Muskie. He was the principal percussionist of Syracuse Symphony.
Okay.
And of Latin origin, an amazing talent. This guy, he's the one that really got me with my snare drum chops, my reading, mallet playing, and then he started me on proper patterns with congas and stuff. So I owe a lot to Ernie. He's
Nice.
he's there still in Syracuse, and he's playing percussion for this other orchestra in Syracuse now. But he's a big influence on me.
Nice. Syracuse, that's really interesting because we have a lot of relatives in Syracuse. So I used to go back and forth, when family used to visit families back and forth and I used to live in Ottawa. So we would go to Syracuse a lot because, believe it or not, there's a whole clan from San Roberto in Syracuse. Different name. And
I know.
this is going to be funny, Rich. And I gotta let full disclosure here. Rich and I discovered, well, I kind of said, when we had this conversation, right? You said, I said, what were your roots? And you said you were from some village in Calabria, southern Italy. And you know how Italians are. There's always a memory of, no matter how many generations, there's always a memory of you and your family in whatever village, no matter how many hundreds of years back. And so, it's important to us to say, okay, now where exactly? Because it makes a difference of how we perceive someone. And then you said, you probably never heard of it. It's a little town called San Roberto. And at that moment, I kind of froze because I said to you, Rich, that's where I was born.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because I don't know anybody from it's a little tiny village in the mountains.
Yep.
Yeah.
I go often, and I'm there, whether I'm on tour in Europe or visiting family in Italy, because we still have a lot of family everywhere. And since I'm still really first generation, I was 9 when we left. I know a lot of cousins, so I still circulate and visit them, and it's been great. So when you said that, it really threw me in a loop because I knew no one else from San Roberto apart from our immediate family because it's so small, right? And then your name, I said, there's no Mangicaro in the town. So I called my brother, he was a writer and did a lot of work in this whole transition or loss of cultural memory. We actually did an album together, and he wrote about this, and the immigration experience, the projection from the village to the metropolis, and thus the loss of cultural memory. It was a whole big thing for us, and we worked on that. I called him and I said, I don't remember any Mangicaros in the village. And he said, well, there aren't, but there is a family who we know was also living in Ottawa, and their name was Mangialuca. So I reached out and I said, is it possible that a Mangicaro was Mangialuca? And they said, they probably changed the names. As you know, a lot of people in the States specifically changed their names. Either the names were changed for them because the immigration officer couldn't pronounce it or they couldn't write it properly, so they wrote whatever. All the reasons. Emil Richards is Italian. A lot of guys, Louis Belson. It goes forever, that story. But a lot of names were changed, either on purpose or because accidentally or the circumstance.
I've tried to find the answer to that question too, because all my elders are gone. I have one cousin who's 80, and I've talked to him about this on my father's side. But ironically, this year in October is the first time I'm going to be going to that village. I've never been there. And my father, when he left, he didn't go back.
Right.
He left as a baby. So my family and my sisters are coming too. We've never been there. So we are beyond excited for this experience, to see where my dad was born. And actually the name there, according to the records in my family, was Mangiaruca with an R.
Right.
And I have a few family members in Syracuse with that name.
Mangiaruca.
So distant cousins. I don't really know them very well, but so we were supposed to do this trip in 2020 and everything got canceled from the pandemic. So we're redoing this finally. Beautiful. But I can't wait to go and see if there's any Mangiarucas there. I don't know. We'll see,
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I have still have cousins there. My oldest cousin who was there, I was hoping you would have met, but she passed since just a
Oh,
couple of years ago, and
yeah.
she would have remembered because she actually, when I went to her house, I think it was in well, a couple of years ago anyway. I asked her, I said, where would that family be? And she pointed out that house, and I sent you the photo.
The Orange House, yeah.
Yes. And I said, that's where the Manjarukas were. So I sent it to you. And
Wow.
that's funny. But it's, it's great to know like where your roots are, and you start understanding a lot about yourself. And I kid you not, the day you arrive there, you will all of a sudden, let's like the lights come on and you'll understand yourself so much more. It's an eye
Wow.
opener.
It's going to be a trip. And then my other side of the family is from Germany, my mom. And my sisters have been there to the town where my mother was born. I have never been there, but I've been to Germany numerous times, just touring and stuff. But this is going to be a first. And I've been to Italy 5 times, and this is the first time we're going to be going that far south.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll give you some pointers, and I'll introduce you to my cousins who are there.
That
I'll
would be
I'll be
great.
I'm going to be there for 2 months this year,
Yeah.
and I'm always there, I'll prepare them and let them know that you're coming, so
Okay.
they don't speak English, but that'll be helpful anyway. You
Okay.
know. But the funny thing too is there are so many great people who have roots, creative people, I should say, great people, but more so creative people who have roots in Calabria. I mean, Chick Corea is
Yeah.
from Catanzaro. A lot of people did not know that, and we bought a little place not far from there,
You
and
did?
right,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
in a place called Kropani Marina. It's like 300 steps from the Ionian. The beaches are like amazing, and everything is so close. Food is amazing.
All right. Can't wait.
No,
The Picaros are from about an hour from there.
yes,
Yeah.
from the
Eh,
Reggio region. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, they're real close to that. I've talked to the Picaros a lot about that. Their name in Calabria was Picara. And
yeah.
but I used to talk to Joe about that a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Did he go back to the village to? Well, actually, he was around the Reggio. Um, did he
Yeah,
talk about?
I don't remember if he said he returned or not. He wasn't born there, his dad was born there.
Right.
But I can't remember if he or any of the children have returned there. I remember talking to him a lot about it, but I don't remember. I think he and Emil did go there
Right.
because they used to go to
Was
Italy a
Emil
lot
from
together.
Calabria also?
No, Emil, um, I don't remember where Emil's family's from. I want to say Abruzzes, but I'm not sure. But they used to go to Sardinia all the time because they had a festival they played there.
Right.
So
Right.
they would go and stay in Sardinia. Yeah.
Nice. It's funny because when I would be years ago, I remember Toto would be on tour in Italy, and my cousins would go crazy to go see Toto because they knew the backstory, and I had no idea back then
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they knew kind of the distant cousins. So everybody they'd fill up the hall. The Italians always
Yeah.
fill the hall. If you
Jeff and I talked about it a lot too, actually, because Jeff and I were close, and he used to say stuff to me like, you're more than a friend. You're like family. Your roots and everything. He goes, you're family. He used to say that to me,
bet.
which was always amazing.
Yeah,
But
and you'll feel it when you're there. You'll suddenly realize what all that meant. Anyway,
yeah,
that's fantastic. And I'm when you discover that, it's like a part of you. All of a sudden, you say, "Now I get it."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You understand certain things
yeah,
that you had no idea you couldn't possibly
yeah,
know before until you actually walk those streets or those cobblestone roads and that look up, and eat that certain food, and all of a sudden the memories come back. Because I mean, for me, it was a little different because I was 9.
yeah,
So when I first went back, I guess I was about 29 when I first did a tour in Europe, and then with the guys Percussion, we were on tour in Europe.
yeah,
And the first time I said, I need to take a month. I have to go back to the village because this is like gnawing at me and I have to do it. And I
yeah.
did. So it was like the film rolling backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it was amazing. Stuff would come back that I had no idea. It was like hidden under the hood. You know,
That's cool.
it was great. But I know you've played. I mean, being a percussionist and drummer. I mean, you worked with a lot of people. But before, I mean, were you working with a lot of these guys like Glenn Frey, Aaron Neville before the Paiste thing, or after?
Paiste started first.
Okay, because that's where I knew you as the
Yeah,
artist relations for Paiste for years, right?
yeah, it was almost 20 years. I mean,
Wow.
that's basically Paiste kind of led me into all the connections with people that eventually brought me to meeting the people with Glenn Frey's band, and then it kind of went from there. But it all kind of, honestly, that the whole thing really started with John Good. I always credit John from DW
DW,
because
right, right.
at the time that I was doing artist relations for Paiste, every year, the way it really started was every year, the Musicians Institute in Hollywood had their graduation ceremony. And every year I would be one of the presenters for the graduation ceremony for one of the awards. And so was John and a few other of the industry reps. But we used to be invited every year to go and present an award on behalf of the company. And one of the years, the award presentation wasn't at the school. It was at this beautiful theater um, called the Wiltern Theater. And it was a quite an event that night. And I was sitting with John and Esther and his wife, and we were, after we did our thing, he just looked at me. He goes, "What are you doing later?" I said, "I don't have any plans." He goes, "Let's go to dinner, and then I want to take you to see my favorite band." I go, "Okay." So we went to dinner, and then at the time back then, this was like probably 88, something like that, 87, 88. His favorite band in LA was called Venice.
Okay.
And Venice is a local band here in Los Angeles that their first album was produced by Danny Korchmar. And the Venice is comprised of two sets of brothers with the last name Lennon. So two of the brothers, Kip and Pat Lennon, their older sisters are the Lennon sisters. Then their cousins, the other two sides of the band, Mark and Michael, their father was the producer of the Lawrence Welk Show. So they
Okay.
come from, royalty, music royalty. But the band is incredible. My first impression of them was like, whoa, who is this? This band is amazing. Best singers I had ever heard live. Amazing harmonies, just great. So we're watching the band, and after John says, "So I got to introduce you to the drummer because he doesn't have a cymbal endorsement." And that was Scott Crago. So Scott had already had his first endorsement with DW Drums. So immediately I signed Scott to Paiste. And long story short, Scott ended up leaving Venice to go and work with a few other artists like Stevie Nicks and a bunch of people, which led him to meet Don Henley. And now he's been the drummer for the Eagles since, God, it's probably going on close to 40 years. He's
Wow.
been the drummer for the Eagles, yeah, 30 something years. And that's how I got into Glenn Frey's band, through Scott. So it all
Nice.
kind of started with
Wow.
John in the path to meet Scott, and then Scott introduced me to Glenn Frey. Yeah, so that's how that all happened. But through Venice, Venice is also known for playing as a backup band for a lot of celebrity artists. David Crosby used to call Venice his favorite vocal band in America. So they sang on his albums, and we played live with him. So there's a lot of artists that I got to play with because of Venice. Because of being in Venice, I got to play with Crosby and Jackson Browne and Michael McDonald and just a whole bunch of people. And one other thing I'll say about Venice before I'll get off the subject, but Scott eventually left the band. And then the drummer that came in to replace him was a drummer named Matt Logg. Matt was also an endorsee of Paiste and a good friend of mine. And Matt is kind of the one really that got me into Venice, because they were doing a gig coming and they needed a percussionist, and Matt said, "Get Rich to do it." And then it ended up Matt and I did it for years together.
Okay.
Uh,
So
and
you played in the
eventually,
band.
yeah, Matt was the drummer. He
Okay.
replaced Scott Crago, and then he and I ended up doing a tour in Europe with Venice. And jump ahead all these years later, Matt is now the drummer for AC/DC.
Nice.
Matt is a phenomenal drummer. He played on Alanis Morissette's big hit, You Ought to Know, and did tons of sessions in town, ended up becoming the drummer for Slash
Okay.
and a bunch of other bands, but Alanis Morissette. And then when Slash was opening for AC/DC many, many years ago, there was a seed planted there. So, and I'm so happy for him because he's the perfect guy for the gig. I mean, he is so perfect for AC/DC. And it's, of course, can you imagine?
Man, wow.
Dream come true. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's like when the Beatles break up, all down to they needed a drummer.
Yeah.
Thinking of that, I remember, when the Beatles broke up, right? It was a big thing, and we were all following. I mean, I had every record backwards. I know every lick, everything, and Ringo is a genius. I was analyzing. I was, oh my God, how did he come up with that? And I used to have these dreams, and in the morning I would get scared because I'd say, this is real. I dreamt that I would go and see Paul McCartney and say, listen, if Ringo doesn't want to join the band, I'll play. Let's put the band together. The world needs you guys, and I'll play. I'm sure all of us had that dream a few times.
Yeah, can you imagine being Greg Bissonette, though?
Of course. Oh, yeah.
I know you've talked to Greg about it. So have I. I mean, Greg is
oh, no, he's amazing. He's been to COSA many times, and so we have a great relationship, great friendship. And then every time he comes to town, of course, he invites me to the show, and he's funny. And then I would the nice thing about this is, I would say, Greg, I always had a problem with this one thing. Come together. Is he going up or is he going down? That all those technical discussions, because now you're getting to the point where how did he come up with this part, which is so like totally gauche from what you and I would play, right?
Yeah, I know. I've had that conversation with Abe Jr. too. Those two guys have it down, boy.
Incredible. Yeah. And then at one point I said to Greg, I said, okay, now I figured out everything except one. I couldn't for years get back, okay? Like what he does on the snare drum for the whole song. When it first came out, we all looked at each other and said, what? At first it was said, why would he do that? But then it sounds amazing. And then the question then is, like, how in the world did he come up with that? And then in the documentary, right? I was looking forward to that, and I said to Greg, I saw the whole show. I watched the whole thing because I needed to know at what point did he come up with that, from what to what, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, it kind of didn't explain how he made that switch. You could just saw him doing the new groove that ended up being on the record, but it didn't explain why he made that switch over.
Yeah.
To the initial thing he was doing, which didn't really, I mean, it wouldn't have been that song without the change he made. I don't know why he made that change. I know it'd be fun to ask Ringo why.
Well, I did. And I said, please ask him, because now it's driving me crazy. After all of these years, I need to know. Can you please ask him? So he did. And Greg says he doesn't remember.
Yeah, of course.
But here's the thing. If you watched it during that whole documentary, Ringo was always like that. He would just listen, and then at the end decide what to. He didn't just, like most of us, would just putz around. Let's try this. Let's try that. But he wouldn't, apparently. Like, he just listened, and then when it came to him, then he would play. Yeah. So he did for that particular song, for Get Back. He did something, but the moment they did this thing live on the roof, he completely changed it. There was no transition.
Yeah,
that's what he.
I've always wondered about Ticket to Ride. That's a groove that I've always listened to and gone, how did he come up with that? And it's that beautiful in between the shuffle and the not shuffling it, and just laying back a little bit on the tom thing, and it's brilliant.
Yeah,
what he did in that song.
Yeah,
brilliant. That one always got me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was asked to play with this band, a Beatles tribute band at one point, and of course I said absolutely. I said, but I go out of town a lot. I said, no, we'll give you the schedule ahead of time. So they gave me all the charts. I said these are the songs. So I actually notated everything, and
Yeah.
then at the same time, people were saying to me, Ringo was just like you know that story. He was just lucky to be in that band. I said, man, you have no idea. I've been writing this stuff out, and I'm having such difficulty. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done is to understand this and the simplicity, but it's brilliance.
Yeah.
Why would he do this? Like where did it come?
Yeah.
So when they say it's about the song, that's really it.
Yeah.
It's you're playing the song. You're not,
Right.
your technical stuff. I mean, of course, Ringo has the chops, but he would never. He didn't talk chops. It was like, what did the song need, and then he meant it.
Right.
It wasn't just right, as it
Right.
should be.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. In your whole time as just skipping subject here, in the your time with Paiste, I mean that's a really interesting position because you're a player, of course, and you're talking and representing the company with the players who were playing Paiste. And I would run into you all the time with I used to always look forward. I say key people in the COSA project. Who do I have to see? We're having so and so at COSA. We always made sure and wanted to make sure that we have them covered as far as their endorsements, because the photos would be in Modern Drummer and all over the place, and we had to always respect 100% who they represented, and everyone was well represented on all sides, musical, the business side, because that's all important.
Yeah.
And you were always there. We used to have one conversation. That's it.
Yeah.
But during that time, I mean, what were the things that, I mean, you obviously met a lot of people that you had to work with. Some of the names, some of the situations that were interesting, and some of the interesting decisions you had to make in that position. I wouldn't say position, but in that responsibility.
Say the question again.
As the artist relations for Paiste,
Yeah.
you had to always deal with the artists, the company,
Right.
making sure everybody understands what's going on,
Right.
all of that whole picture, which is, I mean, start by explaining what artist relations, because you're like one of the top guys. I mean, you, John DeChristopher, there are not that many people who are there that long who did it so well.
Thank you. Well, artist relations, I was thrown into that pie, literally thrown in. I came to that company. My first year, I did telemarketing, and this was before computers. So we had index cards with dealers' information, and I would call all day long. And I was kind of backing up the external sales reps back then. But that was only the first year, and then the second year I was there, I took over artist relations. So I was thrown into the fire. They knew I was a player. They knew I was college graduate in music, and they just said, "It's all yours now." I didn't really have any training, but I did know what it was like to be a player and to be professional, and I knew the instruments. So it was just a matter of being the liaison between the artists and the product, and advising them on what they could use, fulfilling their needs, whether it be live or recording, and basically collaboration sound-wise. That was part of the job. The other part of the job was being kind of like a talent scout, for a record company, because I had to find artists that could represent the company, and an endorsement in our industry is basically an extension of sales. So if you're going to be considered for an endorsement relationship with a company, you have to bring something to the table in order to increase sales. It's not just all about, give me the free product because I got chops. There's a lot of misconception. I've written a couple of articles about this for drum magazines, and I know John has too, actually, speaking of DeChristopher. But it's, he and I still talk all the time now. But it's basically how can we mutually benefit each other to promote this product by utilizing your name and likeness? So, some of the guys that I worked with in the early days were already signed to the company. Steve Edelson was there before me, and
Right.
Steve was there in the beginning of Paiste America. Paiste America was created out of initial distribution by Ludwig America, and then
Right.
became its own entity, Paiste Incorporated, Paiste America, from the Swiss office to America. And I think it was 1981, I think was when Paiste became incorporated. I think it was basically around the same time that MTV first aired. So Edelson had initially signed people like Alex Van Halen, Stuart Copeland, um, uh, Sheila E., Jeff Picaro. So when I came in, those guys were already established, but then I started bringing a lot of other artists in once I started. Um, so my job was basically to facilitate, assist, and also find new talent. So,
Nice.
and then we had different levels of endorsement. It's still to this day the way it works. I mean, if you see behind me, this is my studio in Los Angeles, which is also doubles as Bops showroom, because I now do artist relations for Bops, which is based in Canada, actually,
Yes.
owned by Sabian. So behind me is the Bops showroom and also my personal studio. But I just wanted to mention what you guys are looking at. But
Yes.
yeah,
Looks
so I mean, it was
beautiful, by the way.
basically, yeah, it's a fun room. I did both of my records and working on my third album in there, and it's got great sound because it's got really tall ceilings, and but also that's where the artists come to see all the Bops products. And I also just took on a new brand too that I'm working with, a small brand out of Colorado called Native Tongue Percussion. They make really cool blocks and bell attachment things that you can put on the side of your shells, whether it be a hand drum or a drum kit, and have easy access to really cool blocks and bells and sound effects and stuff. Very innovative little company out of Colorado. So I just started working with them, so I have all their stuff in here too. But um, yeah, Paiste, that was the job. Assist, facilitate, advise, uh, find talent, book clinics. I used to travel a lot for Paiste, doing clinics myself and uh, setting up trade shows in different countries and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and you basically took over from Steve. I mean, Steve was amazing. I really miss Steve. He's a great friend.
actually, Steve left before there was another guy
Ah, okay.
in the interim, like for a very short period of time. I'm not sure how long, maybe a year or two. A guy named Jeff Newhouser, and then Jeff left, and then I came in. So I was right after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And having, I mean, I remember it's way back. I mean, I'm a Sapien player, but way back, I remember buying these 15-inch Sound Edge
yeah,
hi-hats. Remember those? The what would they call this? The Sound Edge, right?
found that Jeff.
Yeah, those were interesting, and I remember being one of the first guys with when I was in Ottawa, and I had these 15-inch hi hats with this corrugated bottom, and everybody's looking around and saying, "What is that?"
Yeah.
But I was always, searching
Interesting.
for the
Yeah.
sounds.
Interesting design because it allowed the air to escape. There's other companies doing this now, but it was the first company to do the Sound Edge bottom hat, which let the air escape, created a much more pronounced high pitched chick. And that's kind of what Van Halen used. I think John Bonham did use them. A bunch of great players used those. But, speaking about product, I think that was the other side of my job with Paiste. And I'm doing it now with Bops too. It was really one of the more exciting things for me is product development, sound
Right.
development, because I was part of the team that developed and created the signature series for Paiste and the traditional series and the dark energy series. Those three series I was involved with and was kind of like the liaison between the guys in Switzerland hammering and the artist giving the adjectives to move the whole thing forward. And that was really, really a fun, exciting part of the job. I loved that. And I love doing it with Bops. We're creating stuff together now with the different manufacturers that we work with, and it's really fun. Matter of fact, if you see that conga right there behind me, the the one with the black with all the print on
Yes,
it.
I was going to ask you about that because that looks interesting. Yes.
That's Lenny Castro's signature series, and I helped create that with him. And that is a really proud moment for me because Lenny had, before coming with Gombops, he had never had a signature product with a company, at least congas and bongos or
Right.
timbales. He had tambourines with LP, but he never had congas and bongos, which I really couldn't believe when he told me. And I'd worked with Lenny at Paiste for a long time, and he was another one of the artists that was already a Paiste endorsee before I came in. But then we
Right.
became
Right.
very close when I was working with him and Jeff. But he told me, I don't know, 5 years ago or something at NAMM, he goes, "Yeah, I don't have signature congas and bongos and with LP," and I was like, "I don't believe that. That's
Yeah, he's been on
you?"
so many records, Lenny. I mean,
Yeah,
since the beginning, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, "Well, listen, let me do that for you." So I brought him in Gombops and we did this. And it's a really hip design. It's a skull that his son drew. So that's his son's drawing on the drum, and then we had added some hands and some sunglasses to give his vibe.
Okay.
It's a really cool drum. Look, it's a cool looking shell. So
Nice.
I'm really proud of that, and Lenny is really happy. Plus, we do have his couple of really great tambourines too. Our best tambourines are Lenny's tambourines.
Right.
Beautiful
Nice. What kind of heads are you using on those?
goatskin.
Go. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and they're beautiful. They got his name is engraved in the shell, and then the skull is on the middle of the head, the Lenny skull. It's really a hip tambourine, and they sound amazing. They're definitely like bordering on orchestral, kind of like rivaling the Grover stuff. Really
Okay.
beautiful. So
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad to hear. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, as we move on and develop new technologies and the sounds, I mean, way back, I remember the very first congas. In fact, I'm an LP guy, but I still have my original gun bops that I
wow,
bought in 1973. I won't be afraid to say the year
yeah,
at the Professional Drum Shop in New York, because I used to go to New York all the time. I used to study, fly down to New York. While I was at university, I would study in New York, go back and forth every month. But I bought my first set of congas, which I still have, and they're the red cherry
yeah, yeah,
with I think they're mahogany, but
yeah.
with the cherry fiberglass covering on the outside.
Oh, really? Okay, so okay,
Yes,
wow,
and I still have them, and the original skins, by the way. And I
wow,
used those way for a million recordings. Like they still sound amazing.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they last forever. I mean, you can't kill them. They're
And you know what?
beautiful.
I'll just say this to your audience. You have been instrumental to Gombops over the years with our work in Cuba.
Yes.
Everybody, Aldo has, with his organization, has really helped Gombops in Cuba with kind of furthering the brand down there, and also turning us on to some really great players down there too. So yeah, thank you.
Oh no, it's a pleasure. And, I mean, Sabian also. I mean, it started with Sabian
Yeah,
with Bob, and I remember at one point because what happens is we've been over 20 years been doing these workshops in Cuba, and I just decided we're going to help. We're going to create this channel, this build the bridges. I don't care politically. I don't want to hear about it. We're musicians. We need to have these instruments, and all those great guys down there. Rich, imagine you have those instruments in your studio. I mean, my studio, I mean, I could fulfill 3 universities,
yeah,
plus the group, plus everything else. I would go down there. I would see people like Changuito, people like Giraldo Piloto, and Oliver Valdez, all of these guys. And they had their instruments were like hanging. And I remember being asked to sit in. The band sounds amazing. I would go and sit in, whether it's drum set or congas, and I couldn't move anything. Couldn't move the pedal because it was like,
right.
and the heads were cracked, and it was. So I said, this is really not fair. I don't know how in God's name they made a sound out of it. They did. They're amazing. But I said, that's not fair. Me coming back here, and if I'm doing a session or a tour, I'll say, well, I think I'm going to use this, that, and this one. Oh, no, I'll take the blue one instead because of the color scheme that they're using for the tour. this is crazy. So I really didn't feel good. And then, so with Piloto, we did he wanted to do a competition, a national competition for students. And then in drum set, congas, timbales, bongo, and bata. And then the percussionists and drummers who would win the instrument. Of
Right.
course, they didn't have the instruments to give. So I started bringing all my stuff down, buying things, and then I said at one point, I said, guys, I need help. If we got to help them out. And it was Bob Zildjian
Yeah.
Bob at Sabian. Piloto happened to be in Montreal, and I had been doing this for years. And he said, let's meet, because I know the story in Cuba. Aldo's doing incredible things. He's the guy who's been leading this, and we have to pay attention, and we're going to help them. So Andy was there, and Peter Stairs, and said, we get behind Aldo on this. So I said, okay. So then I said, let's work on this, and then I helped them set up the endorsement program. Like, there are 25 artists in Cuba whose symbols were just atrocious. I mean, it was just, you listen to this and you just feel awful. How could this be? But they sounded great, but the sound was not great. So over years, we bringing these things down, and then the Gone Bops. So now they have great instruments, and I told them, I said, now the sound of Cuba is Sabian Gone Bops.
Yeah.
That's the sound of Cuba now, and it's amazing. So
Yeah. Someday I have to go. I still haven't been down there yet. I cannot wait.
yeah,
I kind of blew it, actually, a couple of years ago. It was still during the kind of rage of pandemic. I was a little freaked out about traveling, and Jesus Diaz had offered me to go with him to go there, and I couldn't do it. I should have.
yeah, but it was a hard time. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a couple of years. Even for them, it was very, very difficult. Imagine all of us stopped for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, in Canada, I didn't leave my house for 2 years. It was
know.
crazy.
I know, it was terrible.
And imagine Cuba, no music for the same thing. So they really had a hard time. And so we did our workshop online. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And I said, they're not doing well at all. I'm talking to Changuito, I'm talking to Piloto and all the guys. And I'm saying, what's going on? He says, well, we're all staying home. And he said, oh, my God. So I said, let's do a weekend intensive live from Havana. And we hosted it from Montreal. So it was insane. Everybody's looking at me. Are you feeling well? What about the internet down there? And what about this? I said, I know the drill. We're going to pull this off. So I went down there a few times, found out what needed to be done. And it just so happened that, everything broke loose because they were in complete disarray. So the subsidies for electricity was gone, and the internet. Although everybody was having internet, but not all what we needed. So there were certain places the government said, okay, you need it, so we're going to hook you up, and people who are important in the system. So we figured out who those points were, and it was costing $100 an hour to do it. I said, I don't care. We have to do this because we're not working, and they're even worse because we'll figure it out. It's just a passage, whether it's a month or 2 years, we'll figure it out. We're creative and smart people. But they're sitting there waiting because they cannot do anything. They can't even fly out when they have an international tour. There is no international tour or even local. So for 2 days, we had everybody. And then we had to not only do that, we had to hook everybody up. Changuito at the time couldn't lift his instruments. He was, his hands were having a hard time. So we had somebody go to his place, pick him up, bring him to Oliver's house. We set him up there. It was a real setup. And I said, we have to do this for a lot of reasons. They're not making any money. They're not making any music. They need to see hope, and we're there. They need to see us in the same situation.
Yeah.
And so we did it. It was I said this is like going to the moon. It was one of those projects. But here's the funny part. It was amazing. We filmed it, and eventually we're gonna bring it out as a series, another series, educational, because it was
Great.
2 days of all those guys.
Great.
But the funny thing was this: I had Yolan was here in the studio. Our technician was upstairs in another place. Everybody's in different rooms to make sure everything is rolling. And then in our neighborhood, we lost electricity, so we went down. So we were the host, and I'm saying, "Oh no! All those people who are registered from around the world. I hope we don't lose this." This was like, it took months to put this together, and that lasted about 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was Oliver who was giving his class at that point. And then we finally came back on. We thought it was us, so everybody's scrambling here, but it was the neighborhood. It went down. Something happened with a break. I don't know what, but finally we came back on, and Oliver says, "Well, we lost you, Aldo. Where were you?" But I said, "You continued." Yes, so we have it all. It was only, so what happens, it was this really interesting Zoom, when you have you're the host, when something happens to the host, it jumps to someone else and makes somebody else the host.
Oh. Oh.
So we saved the day.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And then so Oliver says, first world, third world, we had electricity all along.
Yeah. Right.
That was funny. Anyway, but to your point, thank you for the kind compliment. I think it's important for us to be as helpful as we can, and to make things work and happen. You know, especially when we can. We should, on any level, right?
Right. Sure.
And you know, the guys. And when I saw that Bob was so serious, and he was serious about it,
Yeah.
I said, this is not just a corporate thing. Which is fine. I mean, we need the instruments, so it's. I mean, they make great instruments. But I said that you're serious on the two levels, that you want to help, and of course, there's branding. There's people will know the position that Sabian and Bops have in Cuba. Didn't exist. Now it does, and it's huge. But it's because of this. This intention, which was to really help, because he knew, and it's by the second, that's at the same time, when you help, it always comes back to you. But not just for that reason. You help because you should, and of course, always.
Yeah.
But thank you. Just to say all of that, to say thank you, Rich.
Sure.
And I do it with, it's one of those things. You got to do things because you have to do them, because that's the right thing to do. That's all.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like everybody else. I know you're the same, and a lot of people in our industry who are great people who get it. They know, you always do the right thing, and the right thing always happens, and great things happen. And then when we're gone, we're gone. We can only do.
Right.
But while we're here, we're gonna have fun, Rich.
That's right.
And what else are you working on now?
Well, I'm actually working on my third album for personally. It's pretty much it's all written, and June we start going in for mixing, and there's a few other instruments we need to lay down, but it's another instrumental record. So I'm going to be finished with that one soon. I'm excited about that. Then I have a fourth record that's completely different than my first three, which is more of a singer-songwriter album, which I'm singing on everything, and more song-based stuff.
Nice.
So I got about 6 tunes done on that too, because I've always been a singer. I sang background with Glenn Frey. I'm not really that interested in singing lead live, but I do it for my albums and the songs that I write. So that one will probably be done for next year, for 25. So that's what I'm working on personally. And then actually this year is a very exciting year for Bops. I'll just mention this.
Yeah.
This is our 70th anniversary this year. So I am working on a big thing right now for the company with Alex Acuna. first of all, we're going to have a celebration party in October for the 70th anniversary that we're working on planning, which is going to be uh, uh, held here in Los Angeles. And then also a part of the celebration, Alex and I are working on he wrote a piece of music, a beautiful piece of music. And the concept of the project is the recording, which will feature Alex and some core members of the band here in Los Angeles. But then we're bringing in Bops artists from all around the planet to play on the recording. And it's all going to be
Nice.
filmed. I got the idea from Playing for Change, that great YouTube channel, Playing for Change, where you see people playing from all over the world. So we're going to have all our top players playing on this track, and it's all going to be filmed. I'm going to edit it together into a video in celebration of the 70th. So
Beautiful.
it's going to be awesome. The track is amazing. I was just over there the other night, heard it, and so now we're letting all the artists know. So it's going to feature great players, Roberto and Lucito Quintero, Elia Lazo, Jamie Haddad, Lenny Castro, Willie Calderon, um, Ignacio Baroa is going to be on it. Buddy Dressel is
Nice.
going to be on it. Let's see. I don't want to forget anybody. Will Phillips is playing on it. Let me think. There's like 15 Gombops artists, including Alex, of course. Gigio Parodi out of Peru.
Nice.
An
Nice.
amazing percussionist out of Tel Aviv, Israel, Gombops artist. You guys need to know about this guy. His name is Itamar Dawadi. He is one of the great percussionists in the world. We're hoping to have him on it. He lives in Tel Aviv. So yeah, it's going to be a really
Beautiful.
exciting
And
project.
and and
So,
Walfredo Senior can comment on that one.
well, Fredo, we want him. I actually talked to Orestes yesterday, Orestes Vilato, too, about this. And Walfredo, I would love him to be a part of it. Not sure if he physically would be able to
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
but we're going to let him know, of course, and then have him say something.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The funny thing is this regarding Gone Bops. I mean, Gone Bops was the first major company. I mean, back in the '50s, and
right.
and I mean, making incredible stuff, and I mean, still do. But I mean, they're I don't know who the original guys were, but I still have records they used to print, these little records that I used to order, and as I'm digging up and cleaning up here, I said, wow, this was. Even acetate was one, and there was another one that they sent me. It looked like a 45, but it's actually 33 with it's a lesson. I forget what it was. So I'm digging these things up, and then I mean, fast forward, Walfredo Reyes Senior. He is like the last guy who lived both worlds, right? Cuba and America, and he went back and forth a few times. And I mean, he's just simply amazing as far as what he's done in percussion and drum set and combining the two. I mean, way
Yeah.
before anybody was even thinking about that. Not
Hmm.
only that, but he was like, I call it, he was there all
Yeah.
along in everybody's situation. And at one point, we had him in Havana with us, him and his son, and Wally Jr. They both came. And I said to Walfredo, I said, you have to do a clinic for all of us and about this hybrid playing Cuban percussion and drum set, where that came from, because there's this whole bridge that he was one of the first guys and
Yeah.
responsible for.
Hmm.
And he did. And there's another guy there who kind of took over that idea. His name is Roberto Smith. Imagine, we call him El Capitan. Brilliant percussionist who's got 15 hands, 14 feet, and he's invented a whole way of playing. And he's also an inventor. He was actually the first guy who invented that fusheke that LP
Hmm.
called. It was actually his invention that we had brought back, and that kind of weird. I'm not sure where that went, but he's the guy, quite an inventor and concepts. and he's the guy who has taken this whole thing to a whole other level.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, amazing creativity. But I'm glad you're doing that. I'm glad the company's doing that. I think
It's
it's
going to be
important to
great.
celebrate these things.
Yeah, and I can't wait for everybody to hear this piece of music because it's so good. It's just Alex just wrote a beautiful piece, and to have everybody's love in it, it's going to be very, very special. So
Beautiful. Wow. Man, that's so nice to hear. I'm glad about that. I spoke to I keep in touch with Alex, of course, for many different things, but
yeah,
he's another brilliant guy.
oh
Wow.
yeah, yeah, he's
Amazing.
very inspirational and yeah, and
Yeah.
influenced all of us so many ways. Yeah,
Yeah. And we're so lucky to have a lot of these guys that we've been
yeah,
blessed to hang out with, to learn from, and to interact with, on whatever level, and just make the world a better place and a more fun place.
no kidding.
The hard work is always going to be there, but might as
Yeah,
well have some fun with this.
yeah.
So anyway, I mean, we could go on about all this stuff forever, but I'm looking forward to the 70th, and I'm going to look forward to talking to you more about your Calabria trip. On our personal, I want to tell you though something that I know I listened to your records and they're great. So
Thank
here's
you.
one that I did.
Was that you in Calabria
Yes, from the
and your
village.
mom and your brother, or what?
My brother and my mother was pregnant for my sister.
Wow.
And this
What's the name?
album,
What's the name of that?
it's called The Way I Remember It.
Oh, okay.
And in the back, my brother in his car
Yeah,
from the village to the
yeah.
metropolis.
That's so cool. You
And
printed LPs. Good for you.
yeah, no, it's a great project, a very personal thing, and
Sure.
and my brother I say was because he's passed a couple of years
Okay.
ago, but he's a brilliant writer, he's a poet,
Oh,
he's a very well known guy, and there's some of the poems, like I'll just give you a quick one. One that it says, doors, the word doors, definition: doors, places we go through to come from. I
hmm,
mean, he and I would sit and he would throw these things at me, and it would just, your mind just goes to a whole other deep place,
yeah, yeah,
and it like the walls move,
yeah.
you know. It's amazing, and I know you know what I mean when you start discovering these things. Apart from the music side, the world, the business side, from the personal satisfaction, because you get to a point in your life where you're not running forward so much. You're expanding your world, but you're running deeper a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no kidding. It doesn't end.
No, and it's fantastic, and you just have to keep your health together, mental and
Well, that's it.
physical.
It's interesting. When I was over to Alex's the other night. He's going to be 80 in December, and the guy
Wow.
is in unbelievable shape. And he, we were talking about aging and and staying creative and he's a proof of keeping movement and physical movement and in a consistent basis, but also he practices every day drumming. He practices every day. He showed me some of the things that he works on. Um, he works out of very technical, difficult snare drum books for reading to keep his not only to keep his chops up, but to keep his mind sharp.
Sure.
And he works on this stuff, and he was showing me how he's playing rudiments while playing clave in one foot and the tumbao in the other foot by playing like the first page of stick control, or something where he's playing, keeping all of the limbs going and stuff. And his mind is so sharp,
Wow.
like he really doesn't look like he's aging. You've seen him,
Yes.
but it's so inspirational to me and to all of us, really. How he looks at this, not just a combination of keeping the mind sharp, but also he does martial arts, so he's moving all the time. And he's really, very, strict with his consistency on that. Man, that is the secret.
Yeah.
That, body, mind, spirit connection,
Yeah.
I've been doing yoga for 35 years, something like that. So yoga has really helped me, with that, and also like, swimming and, that kind of stuff. But I don't do nearly what he does when it comes to the reading and practicing. I've always been a little bit, admittedly, a little lazy with the practicing, drumming. And he is inspiring because he does it every day. I
Amazing.
work on stuff when I need to, or I'm working on for getting ready for a gig and whatever, but I should do it more often. And he kind of inspired me the other night to keep the mind sharp, because it really is the
Yeah.
key,
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
No, and the words, if use it or you lose it,
that's
it's
right.
as simple as
Yeah,
that. And
right.
I mean, you brought something also important. Here is the spiritual part, and it's true. It has to be this triangle. It's mental, physical, and spiritual. I mean, I meditate. I mean, I meditated
Yeah,
transcendental meditation since I was in university. The whole Beatles thing.
yeah.
Uh, my Guru Mahesh Yogi, who actually came to Montreal, and I saw him live, and since then that's what's really helped. What's helped me in achieving half the stuff. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to if I didn't keep
Yeah.
my mind sharp. I don't work out as much as Alex, of course. I wish I could, but it really makes a difference. And then your
Yeah.
spiritual part, those three parts makes all the difference. And you're creative.
Yeah,
It's
it's all
yeah.
about balance. I mean, I'm sure you used to talk about that with Emil, because Emil meditated.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, he was really inspiring to me too, because he had that connection.
It
You
makes a
know,
big difference. And I tell people, I never talked about it years ago until I suddenly heard other people who I look up to for, whether they're in business or music or whatever. And one guy, I forget who it was, who mentioned someone I respected a lot and said, well, what do you do to keep your sanity? And the guy said, I meditate. And I said, oh, now I can tell everybody I do that too. And that's what's kept my sanity throughout all that work that you got to do touring the world, or, the COSA stuff that we've been doing from China to Cuba to Europe to here,
hmm
everywhere, and keep it all together and still play and still have a family and still, how do you do that? Well, it's those three parts and staying
yeah.
on, what you do is,
Meditation, I meditate, and that's one of the most difficult things for me. Um, uh, you know, uh, Even though in yoga we're kind of doing a moving meditation, because a lot of times when you're moving through the different postures, you're really not thinking of anything else. You're in that place,
right.
and that is a big part of my meditation. But when I just try to sit in the morning, and I try to do a little bit every morning, and just sit and breathe and close my eyes before I do anything in the day, that's the first thing I'll do. That's the most difficult thing for me,
Yeah.
because I immediately can't. I'm trying to turn off the mind of what's coming up. What do I have to do? Not to have that. And the challenge is to let the thoughts go through you, and go by, and just breathe, go back to the breath, all of that. Boy, that is challenging, man. That is, you think that you're just sitting,
Yeah.
as it is not easy.
No, especially when you're a creative person, because you're thinking, resolving all the time, and you just have to like leave it us, throw all that out into space,
It's really
and
hard.
your
Yeah.
brain needs that break because we tax it so much, and then it just regroups, and then the answer is right there, and there you have it.
My wife and I were just in the mountains a couple days ago for our anniversary, and we went up to Big Bear, which is a beautiful mountain up near us. And we were with, I don't know if you remember a great drummer named Brian McLeod, but he's one of my favorite drummers. Brian's on a ton of big records. He and his wife bought a place in the mountains, and they live up there now, and he basically
Nice.
does sessions and skis. But um, man, he carved out a nice life. It's really cool where
Nice.
they are. But it made me and my wife think, because we really love the mountains, it's really our happy place. And when I'm there, man, I'm able to tap into that a little bit easier,
Yeah.
away from the city, away from all the cement. When there's more trees, there's more air.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful. That's really where I wish I could just live full time, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not bad living where I live in Santa Monica, which is really a nice place. But the bustle of the city and all that. As
Of
I get
course.
older, I crave more of that quiet.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. That's why, when we bought this place in Calabria, and I go there, and I always stay there 2-3 weeks, a month, between things, and run on the beach, swim at 8 o'clock in the morning,
Uh,
and then I go online, or I do what I have to do, and your day becomes 2 days. It's
yeah,
amazing.
that's right.
Yeah, no, it's important. It's important to control your environment when you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Rich, I want to thank you for taking the time. Finally, we get to do
Thank you.
this.
Thank you for having me. If you don't mind me mentioning, I want to just hold up my two albums so people know what I've got
Yeah.
out. That's my first record. It's called Travels. That came out in 2018, and this one called Dialogues came out in 22. So those are available everywhere. And then my third album is going to be called The Dream I Had, and that's going to be done towards the end of the year. So that's always, I'm really
Nice.
excited about that. And this the next record is these two first records. There's all kinds of instrumentation and some guest artists on it. There's a tribute to Joe Porcaro on the second album that I did. This third album is basically going to be me playing piano and percussion. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but Aldo, thank you for having me, man. I've been watching all these episodes you're doing, and you're doing a great thing and bringing some really interesting people with so much knowledge and information. It's really cool. It's really cool. We
very
need a lot of this, And I did want to mention one other thing, which is I do a podcast myself, as you know, but it's for Gone Bops. So it's a Gone Bops featured podcast called Percussion Loft. It's available wherever you podcast, and there's 16 episodes now. So it's all kinds of people that you like to listen to, but they're all Gone Bops artists. So you'll hear a lot of the great Gone Bops players talk about their careers, including a great episode with Andy Zildjian as well, the owner of the company. And I'm getting ready to do my next interview, which I think is our 17th episode, with Scott Craigo, the drummer for the Eagles. So that's coming up too.
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice that you're doing that. I think all of these things can be very inspirational for anybody who listens, and they're timeless, important
Yeah.
and timeless.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
right.
All right. Well, thanks again, Rich. And as I always say, to be continued.
Yeah. Thank you, Aldo. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.